Okay. Ass. Okay.
Uh,
All right. Reviewing Barbarian. All right. So, of course, this one's been out for a little while now. We watched it, what, about a week or so ago now at this point. Just now reviewing it. Whatever. That's just how that goes. Anyway, yes. Okay. So, this was meant to be this new, very like mystery film, if you will. It's meant to be very surprising. It's meant to keep you on your toes. A lot of people were saying going, even I didn't pay that much attention to it going into it. I only listened to one reviewer, someone who I usually listen to.
and I went into it blind completely.
Yeah, and it was just they were basically saying that that yeah, it's a film that definitely keeps you on your toes. It's not something that you can really review uh non-spoilery without really just trying to explain like what the hell actually happens. All you the gist of it going into it would be like, okay, well, a girl, she rents an Airbnb, but there's someone already attending the Airbnb, and then things seem kind of awkward and strange, and then next thing you know,
It
it's
just
just
goes from
like,
there.
yeah, it just goes from there. So we can just pretty much like start off a little bit spoiler free, and then just kind of ease on into the spoilers. Now, for you going into it, and as far as the film was starting off and you were moving along, how did you feel going along within those first like 15 minutes of the film?
Um, I'm gonna just be straight. The name Barbarian, I was honest to God expecting like way back when,
Like,
forever ago, legit barbarians, because I'm an idiot. But that first little bit, I'm like,
false advertising.
no, well, no, not really. But um, for the first little bit, I'm like, okay, where the hell is this going? Like, oh well, yeah, that kind of would suck to show up. You think you have this reservation and someone's in your place. Like, well, what the hell? Um, and yeah, I guess I had my questions here and there. I forget specifically. I know there was a little. I had a couple questions in the beginning. They're like, why the hell is she doing this? I mean, this is kind of dumb.
Mm,
But yeah, sketchy neighborhood, night, raining. That's kind of creep central for sure. That would give me the willies.
yeah.
But yeah, the first little bit, it's like we've may or may not have all been in a situation kind of like that. But yeah, and then like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah, it's definitely a slow burn as far as the first part of this movie and set you up for whatever the hell they're gonna go for. And obviously, right off the bat, you have this one girl here who, once she gets to the Airbnb, I mean, it's very rainy, it's very dark, and so I find that too, especially once the film is done, you go back and look at it and realize how they kind of played with the environment a little bit as far as not showing you what the actual surrounding environment looks like by having it being dark and rainy, so you don't really know all the surrounding area. And then, of course, as you go along, you realize just how much.
Yeah, once it comes to daylight and then you
Yeah,
actually see,
because
it's like,
he had a very
oh,
much a moment where she reacts and she's like, "What the?" I'm like, "Well, shit." And yeah, so once she gets there and she runs into Mr. Pennywise up in there already, which she sees him. She's just like, "Wait a minute, you motherfucker, what are you doing here, creepy ass?" And yeah, and so the way that they play that is actually, I mean, I do like a good solid like slow burn type of thriller and set you up to like, okay, how is this gonna go? As long as the payoff, as well, you don't feel like you waste your time as far as like that slow burn. I do like that sort of type of film that does that. And so, yeah, I mean, the way that they set it up, it actually does feel rather organic. Like, this does feel like a way that someone would probably approach that as far as her, her senses as to as the level of trust with this guy, how genuine he seems, and how much of it's just situations like, okay, what can I do about it, this and that. And and he does come across as rather awkward and kind of strange, but
I mean, who
still
wouldn't be in
rather
that situation?
genuine. And it's just like and it's fascinating as it's going along because again, it plays with your expectations. And I knew with that okay, yeah, the puzzle here may not seem so obvious, but I'm just trying to figure. I was like, okay, where could this go? And
Yeah.
if he does have something to do with whatever sort of factors that play into this, to what extent exactly? And so it was interesting, at least going in knowing that you have to have that mystery aspect to it. And so it was interesting going along, and as it just goes along, she winds up sleeping over and stuff like that. They start to, get to know each other a little bit. They actually start to hit it off where you could tell she's actually kind of starting to get into him a little bit after a certain point in time. And then by the next morning and such, she goes to her interview, and even like after she's done with like her little job interview, she's going off for like this like documentary job or whatever. And when she mentions to the woman, she's like, "Oh yeah, where are you staying?" And she mentions where she's staying. She's like, "Really? That fucking place?" like she really just stops like, "Real
Like
like
deep
bitch,
in the ghetto.
like what are you doing there?
Yeah.
Get your ass out of there." And so you're just like, "Well, what the fuck is up with this place?" And she's like, "What is going on here?" And so she goes back, like I say, he hadn't even come back yet, because he had mentioned the night before, like left her a note, like, "Oh yeah, please leave the key in here so when I come back, blah blah blah." And then so once she starts to discover shit, she goes down to the basement and then she finds like the secret room area, and then you're just like, okay, it's like, what's going on here? Is he setting her up? Is he trying to like ease her into that sense of security? Is he playing the long game here and this and that, whatever? And then you just go into this whole thing and where she actually finds herself getting locked in there. And how did you feel about her as far as her like approach to being in the basement and like getting locked in, as far as like because you know how she did like the little mirror trick and the light and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that was
How did you
pretty
feel about
cool.
as far as her smarts? Like, did you feel like it worked for you, or you feel like she's like, nah, bitch, you're still stupid, whatever?
um I mean, I guess anybody that knows anything about horror movies, who the fuck's gonna go into a creepy ass basement like that?
Yeah, and she almost had no
Um,
choice, but also that sense,
yeah,
still that
I
major sense of
suppose.
like curiosity. You're just like, what the fuck
I,
is?
I guess, but I'm like, nah, I'm by myself, and then I'll be, getting locked in. I'm like, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to get locked in. Um, otherwise, yeah, that little trick she did was pretty neat. I mean, it didn't help all that much, I don't think, but
No,
it was
but
pretty
again, it was
cool.
like little things like that that can, again, because the usual trope with your average horror film is just like why are you doing this dumb stuff, this and that, blah blah blah. But they do little things to where, again, especially for certain characters that kind of come into play later on, and as far as her character and such, and how they, like, again, they play in a more authentic fashion as far as, okay, you're in this particular situation, what's like the most reasonable route to take here, or like what's your most reasonable approach, like the little trick with the mirror and the light
Mm-hmm.
reflection and this now is like, it's like, okay, like that was a clever little bit they did there to kind of, again, keep you on your toes and shows like, okay,
Yeah.
well, she's a thinker, she knows what she's doing, this and that. And of course, once you start going in through the tunnel, you start to realize like how deep this goes. You're like, what the fuck is all this shit? And you get the one like little room on the side, like just a few yards in, and you're just basically like a snuff film room, and you're like what in the, like, what is that? Like, you can get your ideas of what that could be, and it's
Like, how do you not know that this is here, sort of
like,
thing, you know?
yeah, yeah. I mean, but obviously, you're going through, and you're just okay. Like, who owns this Airbnb? Again, who is this guy? What is he involved? What is he doing? This and that. Because again, he at one point did show up, and
Well,
he was
yeah, I
just
mean,
talking to her, and he's,
but you don't know that he's like a creepo or not,
yeah.
you
And
know.
it seems like because once he goes in, she's like calling for him, because he doesn't like really respond back. Is he luring her in there, to get a response, blah, 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 what's happening here. And of course, you get to that point once and obviously we're getting into major spoilers here, because at this point, again, what can you really say about it without doing that? And once you get into that, uh, fucking Pennywise gets his ass handed to him completely, and his head just bashed into the fucking wall by this underground.
And I
It's
liked him. I'm just gonna say I
his
did
character, or
like
the,
him. Well, I like him as an actor,
yeah,
and well, I did
obviously,
end
yeah,
up liking the character. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
that
because again, it's
thing,
definitely a play on on trust with certain people and this and that and how to approach that. And again, it plays with your expectations as far as that. And by that point, especially once you get to that point, once you realize, okay, homeboy is fucked, then you're just like, yeah, you feel bad for that son of a bitch because you were like, okay, what the hell is going on here? It basically, as far as what, like once you got a glimpse of what was going on there, it's, if you've ever heard the movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but a movie called The Descent is basically all these girls who go into like this, they goes like spelunking into like this, this
I
whole,
have seen that
well, you
one.
basically have like these like nightcrawler
One
people who
time.
are just like in the shadows and shit, and they're basically like all pale and just monster like. It's almost kind of like that sort of
Yeah.
ordeal. It really
Once
kind of is, but yeah, and
crazy titty lady comes out the shadows and
yeah,
she
and it's a
wallopes
pretty,
him
yeah,
and
it's a pretty brutal fucking death too.
yeah.
Once you really, you're just like, oh, you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And then after that, you just cut to, of course, Justin Long's character. You're
Do
like,
do 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 do
complete,
do do.
complete flip of like, okay, this is one of those movies where it seems like the first half has almost nothing. It's almost like Quentin Tarantino in that way, where like you'll have like a
Yeah.
full like almost like mini movie at the start, and then you get to another point where you're just like completely different fucking movie. And so you
Flip the
get to his
switch.
character, and you start following along with him for a while, and it because it's so weird because it starts off too, especially with the whole little scandal like beginning here where he gets a phone call from his people and he's like, it's like, okay, so you're in a bit of a situation here. And it's like, because this one woman here is saying that, yeah, you assaulted her. And it's all, it's just him just going like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, what's she saying? What is she saying? Like, what? And they're basically saying you're off this film project. You're just like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on here, man? You're just going along. You're like, where are we going with this? What is happening? How does this all tie in? I don't know. But yeah, you just follow that along. And again, it's like a lot of things. It's kind of like how Halloween ends for me with, again, I can understand the problems with that film, understandably so, but it's like what I was getting as far as like that first part of it. In isolation, it was fascinating to me. And so again, I'm trusting the film. I'm going along. I'm like, okay, what I'm getting here, it's a fascinating little story, and I'm curious to see like where this stuff goes with him. Is that true? And you start to find yourself getting more intrigued by almost like that as its own mystery. Like, okay, wait, did he assault this girl? What's going on with this guy? And how, again, how does this all tie in? And so, how did you feel about that as far as once you got to the Justin Long stuff? Were you like, okay, where are they going with this? Were you trusting? Were you?
Yeah, I was like,
Is this just random shit just for the sake of it, or what did you think?
I was like, okay, what are we doing with this dude? And
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of, I made that dot connection, like, okay, that must be his property. And then all, the wheels were turning from there. It's like, does he know about that shit down there? I mean, what all? And obviously, we come to discover things, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you don't know for sure, what all is going on until things happen later. So, I mean, it's another hashtag Me Too sort of thing. It's like, okay, did this really
Yeah.
happen? I mean, what's going on with this?
Yeah,
What does he have to do with this story in general?
yeah, it kind of has its
So,
own
yeah.
commentary type of things, but it's not like how a lot of things nowadays tend to just do it for like in a really just bad fashion, like as far as storytelling, as far as character, because it really was like its own contained thing where it didn't feel like, again, it was like tied into this whole bigger agenda type of deal. It just felt like, okay, well, it's an interesting like overall like as far as how these characters and what the story is, and and like I said, I feel like that's a film that can do something well if it again takes you out of what you've been established like with this whole time. Had a bit of a cut there, but a film that can give you like a twist and its own like kind of mini story that has its own little aspect to it, and if that can hook you in and if they do a well enough job to have everything tie in well enough, then that's something that's doing its job well. And again, I was intrigued by that as like, okay, did he really do this? What was going on there? And I did find it interesting, that little bit of story. And even with that whole thing, he did have actually some good actual like light comedic moments here when he's like looking at the listing, and as far as the square inches of the property. Like once he
Fuck
basically,
yeah.
like basically once he like he's trying to like deal with his finances and all this other stuff, trying to deal
Yeah,
with this
that
whole
that sucks.
situation. He leaves town. He goes to Airbnb property which he supposedly owns and stuff like that. He discovers more stuff about the basement stuff and the square footage
Yeah, square
and what it
footage.
can be what
Whoop.
it can be worth. And
Oh.
he's like, yeah, bitch. And it's just him, just for several minutes, just measuring the fucking floor, and like even going into the whole secret tunnel and shit. He's just measuring even the fucking snuff film room. He's going in there, just measuring shit, just completely oblivious, not even thinking twice about any of it. And he's just going along with it. And he just keeps on going, and it's intriguing. And then once he gets deeper and deeper into it, you find like another room, and it has like this like breastfeeding like television like tape playing on it, and these like mattresses and shit. And you're like, what the fuck is this shit? What is happening? And then of course as he goes along, he has his little run-in with the monster, and eventually he comes into contact with the girl because she had been down there during that time, and they fall into basically like this pit, and she's telling him just don't upset this thing. So like just don't fucking upset it. He's like, what the fuck is going on? And then you get a closer look at this monster. Now, how did you feel about this monster and what was going on with that? Did you have an idea or what it was supposed to be, or what
No, no
like what was
idea.
going on?
I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Nasty, creepy, gross titty lady.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. It really is such a bizarre. I mean, I think like once I saw it, I was probably kind of getting an idea that it's basically like a mole type person. But again, why is it there? How is it like that? How does this tie in? I don't fucking know. But then you go along, and then eventually you get to these flashback sequences, which the name of the actor escapes me, but I've seen him in many of
Oh
things. He's been in
yeah.
Doom. He was in the beginning of H2, the Rob Zombie film. He was the paramedic guy that was
Yeah.
driving
Mm-hmm.
the real like pervy motherfucker who got jacked up by the
Pervy dude there.
yeah. And he's been got a
Creepo here.
various Rob Zombie projects as well and
Oh.
stuff like that. And he is a solid actor. He definitely is a good creepy. He's very good.
Typecast.
He's very good at playing that type of person.
But I did like him in Doom. I do like that movie.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
care what anyone says.
he's a solid actor. And so again, you start getting these flashbacks now, and it's to the neighborhood when it wasn't like a complete rundown piece of shit. And and so you're just following along with him. He's just very just kind of like nonchalant, just kind of like, oh, whatever type of guy. You see him go grocery shopping, buying the shit, and then you slowly start to pick up these signs like, okay, there's something definitely iffy and creepy about this guy. And then so you start to get into it. You fall from the grocery store back to the neighborhood, and he's got neighbors telling him like, oh yeah, the neighborhood is kind of going to shit, whatever. He's like, oh, I ain't going nowhere, whatever. And then you see that he's basically again a creep, definitely, and he starts to try to find ways to again play off of trust. He puts on a uniform, goes to a woman's house. He's like, I just need to come here and just check your shit over here, blah blah blah. She's like, oh, okay, come on in. And then so he goes to the bathroom, unlocks the window for later and shit like that. So you assume that obviously this guy is an abductor of sorts, and then you start to again get into that. And so again, how did you feel about that part, and again how that was playing into how were you feeling going along with that part of it?
um. Well, yeah. Again, I was trying to figure out what was going on. I mean, I knew who he was. I recognized him straight away. So I'm like, okay. I mean, he looks like a creep. I mean, he might be a good. There's that little teeny percent of you that's like, man, maybe he's a good guy in this one. But no, it's 99.9%. He's a
Yeah,
creepo. So it's like, okay, where, how does this work into what we've seen or what's going to be going on? And yeah, yeah, it was really weird. It was
yeah.
interesting to do a flashback, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, I guess back then people were like super duper trusting.
Yeah, like back in
So
like anywhere from like the 50s, 60s. It's like in the 70s you could like leave your front door open all night, and it's just like no one's gonna walk. Way different from nowadays. Yeah, people were yeah, definitely more trusting, I'm sure. And and so you get to the discovery. that Justin Long's character, he actually finds him still like down in there, like in this other little room with a TV, and he's just got all this other shit just laying around, and you don't really know what his deal is, or like say why he was down there like that necessarily, like why he. I mean, you see that again why he what was tying in as far as the monster here, and like I said what became of her, but why he was necessarily like just chilling down there, just laying in the bed, basically on the verge of death the whole time. And it gets to the point where he's just like he just offs himself, like Justin Long. He's just like, oh, what you want this? You want water? This and that. He grabs a gun and he winds up shooting himself and stuff. So there were a couple little questions there. It's like, what the fuck is?
Yeah,
Like,
well, I kind of want to know why with that.
Yeah, a couple like little details there. You're just like, why is he down there like that? I don't know, but yeah. And
I mean, I want to know, but don't want to know because I don't want to know like the creepy, nasty stuff.
Yeah, and as far as like the breeding of these things in the band, you're just like, holy shit, like this is some twisted ass shit. And it's one of those things, yeah, you don't necessarily need like all the broad answers, like answered and shit, but at the same time, it's just like what, like this is one of the most bizarre scenarios.
Yeah, particularly, what was going on with him, like that made him in the bed at that point? Like it must have been some kind of illness. That's off the top of my head, at least.
Yeah, so. And it's one of those things to where it's almost like you don't even know. Like I don't know if I should love this or hate this, but all I know is that it's just so fucking batshit to where I'm just like, yeah, we're on this roller coaster now, so bitch. Like we're going for it. Yeah. And so yeah, so everything starts to play out. She eventually gets out, and then she tries to get a hold of the cops, and the cops are fucking useless again. And so yeah, so you get to the point where you have these cops here now, and then again they don't even believe her ass because they probably think that she's probably some random crackhead in the neighborhood. They're just like, yeah, we know this neighborhood, we're not dealing with this shit. You can piss right off. Because even earlier on, they had this one homeless guy again playing with your expectations, where he's like, little girl, running up to her, and you're just like, yeah, your instinct would be to run the fucking house. But eventually, that would turn out to be, its own little thing there. And so, yeah, because she has to go back in, she tries to save them and stuff like that. And so eventually they do get out, and it's nighttime at that point. The monster is just, she actually winds up ramming the monster into the house with the car and shit. And it's actually pretty badass once that actually happens. And so eventually they have a run-in with the homeless dude again, and that's when you see that that the homeless guy is actually trying to help them. He's just like, no, it's like you shouldn't have gone up in that place right there. And what I love about this scene too is that once they actually go into his little hideout and shit, and they're just like, so what's to stop the monster from coming in here? And then he's like, girl, I've been
here for 15 years.
I've been in here for X amount of time. They're like, I ain't never seen shit. Boom, comes in like the fucking Kool-Aid man, and you just feel like you should have just gone, motherfucker. And then he eventually just completely wrecks his ass. And then again, you're just going along. You're just completely flipping expectations. Yeah, you're just along for it. You're just like, I don't.
Literally, when she comes busting through, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, again, you don't know if this is even like great story as far, because again, it's just so much to take in, because you have these three elements between Justin Long, between the flashbacks, and it just seems so random. But at the same time, again, you're just going with it, and it's like, well, I mean, it all makes sense within the context of like how everything is connected, but the way it's just setting itself up with each like significant chapter here, you're just like again, I'm just going with it, and it's just batshit insane. And then you get to the point where they eventually get on top of this roof, on top of this like little tower thing, and
wasn't it like a water tower?
Yeah, it's like some sort of like water tower type of thing, and where eventually, and I know she actually gets wounded at one point in time, and it seems like the monster eventually gets to him up there, and then it seems like Justin Long is eventually going to start kind of redeeming himself, at least trying to help. And then it gets to the point where he's just like, but it's like, oh, we're both gonna die, this and that, and he eventually just slowly like pushes her off, and it's like, bye, bitch. And the monster like goes after her, because the monster considers her, these people like, oh, my baby, this and that, and tries to breastfeed them and shit. And so the monster goes diving after her, and then just goes splat on the fucking ground, and you're just like, what the fuck is happening? What did you think in that moment as far as like his character and what easily could have been her death? Like what was because it
I
was
was like,
just.
oh my fucking god, did he really just do
I mean, if you, I mean,
that?
again, it's one of those things to where it's as reasonable as it can be, especially for each individual character. Like for his
Yeah, I
character,
guess so,
especially, I can
yeah.
understand that, but at the same time, technically, instinctually, knowing that she was wounded and like the situation's like, I can kind of understand, but at the same time, dude, like fuck off, like you gotta stop doing this shit. And then eventually, you wind up seeing that she's actually alive because I guess the monster took the brunt of the fall. And then he gets her off. He's just like, it's like, oh my gosh, you're alive. It's just like, well, I did what I had to do. It's just like, okay, you just, and you didn't even like really, like, I didn't really push you off. You just kind of fell off. You just a log, you fucking shithead. And again, it's just little moments like that to where it's actually kind of funny at the same time because of his character. You're just like, dude, like you are something else. And then sure enough, it ends enough with a bang. Another cut. The monster grabs his ass and then just pulls his ass apart like fucking toilet paper, and you just see the head split from like the back and just pulling him apart. And you're just like, motherfucker, I guess you got your comeuppance, but holy shit, like I can't even believe this film.
I didn't see that coming.
I mean, I don't think
I
any.
didn't.
I didn't. I mean, it was a great fucking death, and at the same time, just like what can I say anymore? And then she winds up killing the fucking monster, and she's like walking back, and then that's kind of like the end of the movie, and you're just
Yeah,
left like
the song at the end there, I'm like, man, that ain't right.
nothing about this film was really right, to be honest
No,
with you. I mean,
no.
again, I can understand like maybe either honestly loving or hating the film. I definitely get the praise. I don't know if I would uh be as in love with it as a lot of people are. I mean, but I definitely appreciate it for the
Yeah, I'm
ride
not
it
in love
takes
with it.
for the ride it takes you on.
It's not one of my most favorite movies,
I mean, it's a
but
little
it
bit too.
wasn't
I mean, for
horrible.
me, again, it's just it is an it's one of those films you just have to kind of experience. It's not maybe for everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not like a go back and rewatch, but you appreciate just its approach and its just sheer like ballsiness for doing what it does. Again, once you see everything, you're just like, well, in context of what they're going with, and again, you're jumping back and forth with all this stuff. It makes sense within this like little realm, this little story here, this little like just situation that these people find themselves in. As batshit and bizarre as it is, and as random as it seems, it all by the end, I mean, it makes sense. Like everything has context to it. What I have probably liked a little bit more as far as like a rewatchability, as far as like a more like tighter story, like ties and stuff like that, perhaps so. But as far as just again, just this little isolated experience of just a batshit insane scenario, it gives you pretty much everything you need, and it keeps you on your toes. That's for damn sure. Nothing winds up how you think it to be. I mean, if
um,
anyone, because we listened to the Red Letter Media review, and they were bringing up reviews and shit like 1-star reviews. Again, I can understand maybe not liking it, but if anyone is to say that they predicted anything in this film, yeah, they are fucking talking out their ass. There's nothing about this film in the slightest that you can predict. Absolutely not. You can say a lot of things, but predictable? Fuck no. Okay, that is bullshit. And so, your final thoughts.
um, it it was good. I don't know exactly what I would rate it. At at least a three and a half, 3 and 3/4. Um, it yeah, for me and my dumbass thinking, oh, Barbarian. Um, and then the crazy titty lady. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he's getting bashed in that tunnel, I'm like, what the?
Yeah, exactly.
It was crazy. It was definitely crazy, and yeah. I don't know that I want to watch it again anytime soon, but I guess if it pops up on TV, it's like, okay, well, whatever. I got nothing going on.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Yeah, again, like it really is. I do think it is a good movie. I mean, I would say it's probably yeah about a four. I don't again. I just don't know if it's one of those films that you can necessarily rewatch like time and time again. It's not that type of film. Maybe the second half, like some of that later stuff, like especially the ending and stuff, because of just how fun and just whacked out that is, and seeing Justin Long get his shit ripped open, it's kind of fascinating to see. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those films you just kind of have to go in and experience for yourself. That is for
Yeah, I
sure.
think it was better because I went in completely blind. I didn't
Yeah,
see any sort of review,
yeah.
anything,
I mean, I
obviously.
didn't either. I mean, especially like I said, yeah, for me because especially a lot of these
But
other.
I didn't. You had watched the one person or whatever that you had
Yeah,
said.
but they kept it
I
as
didn't.
vague as possible. All I
I
know is
didn't.
there was an Airbnb, some creepy guy, and it's a
But I
situation.
didn't
That's it.
know anything. Remember? Because I
Yeah,
said I thought literal barbarian. So
yeah. I
completely
mean, you
blind.
honestly you cannot. I mean, some films you can know stuff about and go into and kind of enjoy. This is a film you have to watch blind. Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just know the spoilers and just go into and just be like, oh, it
No,
doesn't really
that wouldn't have
work. It
been.
doesn't work. It just
That wouldn't.
doesn't. For some people, maybe they wouldn't care, but it really is. It's a blind film. Absolutely. You can't fuck around with this shit at all. You just can't. But yeah, I mean, it's a thrill, to say the least. That's for sure. But anyway, yeah, we'll just leave it right there. That is our review of Barbarian. We'll see what we come to next. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.